Hi, my name is Jordan and welcome to my channel, or welcome back. Just kidding, there is no back. This is the first video. We're going to be talking about books today. What I got up to reading in January and what I tentatively have planned for February. I'm always kind of shocked by people who plan what they're going to read for a month and then just stick to that without allowing for random walks to the bookstore or, some email from said local bookstore that has a book that catches my eye. I also recently started a new book club. I've kind of always wanted to be in a book club, but I don't know. I just never did. Maybe I just didn't look hard enough to really find one. But yeah, I have a few people. I teach at a local yoga studio here, and a few of the other teachers and students have a book club. And so that's one of the books that we'll chat about today. I don't have the physical copy because tell me if you've ever done something like this. I definitely haven't. But essentially, the main person that runs the book club, she checked out the book from the library and then she let other people borrow it, including myself. Maybe I don't trust people enough to believe that if I had a book from the library under my name, that it would be returned. That was wild to me. But it seems to be making its way home. So that's good. I am not as much of a library person. I think they are, of course, incredible, important resources. And I do, of course, have my library card and I will go there every once in a while. But I live less than a 5-minute walk to my local bookstore, like capital I indie bookstore. And I just like going in there. I walk there with my dog, Penelope, who's over here currently sleeping. We walk in the door and they say, "It's Penelope." I don't think anything has made me so proud in my entire life as knowing my local booksellers recognize my dog by name. It's a great feeling. So I walk to my local bookstore often and buy books from there. I don't buy books from Amazon. Don't recommend it when there's so many local indie bookstores to support. Why wouldn't we do that? Okay. That's my little PSA for the day. She's up. Nope, not coming over here. She doesn't want to be on camera today. Okay, we're talking books. Actually, let me back up a little bit because last year, so January of 2025, I set the intention that I wanted to reclaim my reader identity. Essentially, I was that kid who was always known as the voracious reader. I'm sure a lot of people will relate to that term. I was reading all the time. I could very easily just fall into a book and completely not know anything else that was happening around me. And I kind of lost that, especially in my 20s and maybe a little bit early 30s. I'm properly in my mid 30s now. Honestly, I think part of that was screen addiction a little bit, just getting so used to being on social media, other ways to consume content, and just not being as much of a reader. I'm sure I'll get into this in a future video that's a little bit more focused on habits, but I'm a huge habit geek. I really love the book Atomic Habits. So one of the things that I used to rebuild my reader identity was habit stacking. And so essentially how I rebuilt my habit of reading every single day is that I grab my book. We're in my bed right now, because this is where I do a lot of my reading. But essentially, as soon as I wake up in the morning, I don't get out of bed. I don't do anything. As soon as I wake up, I grab my book above me on my headboard and start reading. Here's a sneak peek. This is what I'm currently reading. I'm early into it. And so that's how I built my reader identity, is every morning. So whether I would read for 2 pages or 20 pages, depending on what I had to do that day and needed to get up and around for, I was always reading every single day. And so then I found that because I was already reading again every day, it made me want to keep reading more. And so now I read usually when I wake up, and I read when I am eating my lunch. Another habit thing that I like is that when I'm eating, I'm reading. When I'm watching, I'm walking. So that helps me to, instead of like binging TV or YouTube or something while I eat my lunch, because then it's very easy for me to just keep watching instead of like getting to, the things on my list for the day. If I'm reading, it's easier for me to set down the book and do the thing. Also, so when I am choosing to watch TV or YouTube, I'm on my walking pad, which is in the little workout. I call it my workout wellness room I have next door. And that's a whole story that I could also get into in a future video. Essentially, I was laid off from my job of 8 years last year. Horrible, wild experience. And so I essentially just hated being in that room and had to like revive it because it was my office for years. So my husband and I took out the big bulky desk that was in there. I moved in a stationary bike and a walking pad and weights, and we made it our workout and wellness space. So I do also have a reading area that I have in there. That to me is also wellness, is, little joys for my mind when I'm visiting my fictional friends or otherwise. I do mostly read fiction. I used to feel bad about that. I always thought that, I should be reading more nonfiction. I should be reading more biographies. But when I was making myself try and read the things that I didn't automatically like choose or like reach for, I was reading that much less. So I was like, why wouldn't I just read a ton of fiction, because that's what I want to read. And then it's not like this extra barrier. Now, I do read across genres. Honestly, I read a lot of fiction. But I promise I do read, like, not that it matters, not that you care if I don't, but I do read across genres. For the most part, I do stick with fiction, though. Am I contradicting myself? That's the word I was looking for. Just read what you want to read. I guess that's my thesis of my TED Talk you just listened to. All in all, let's get into the books. So the very first thing that I read in January, I clipped this on here so I could like hold the book I'm talking about, but the book I'm talking about is downstairs and I can't get myself to go get it. So I will put a little picture of it here. So this is the Emily Wilde series. So let me double check what the first one is called. Encyclopedia of Fairies is the first one, and Compendium of Lost Tales is the second one. It is kind of interesting that like the very first book I read in the year was actually the final book in a series. I read both 1 and 2 of the, I think I read the first one in November and I read the second one in December, and then finished off the third one at the beginning of the year. I really liked that series. I had gotten more into like cozy fantasy like that really in the last year. Actually, an example, this was kind of my gateway series, if you will, into like cozy romance kind of books, even though these aren't fantasy, but the Dream Harbor series. I read all of these last year. And so this is, actually it's funny because The Christmas Tree Farm is the third book in the series, but it's the first one I read because I picked it up. I didn't know it was a part of a series. I just loved it because it also has a playlist inside the book, which I think is so great. So I picked this one up. It would have been December of 24. So actually that would have been the first time I read this one because I wanted just a Christmassy book. And I was kind of starting to get more into romancy books, and I thought it looked cute and I wanted something cute and easy to read. And so even though the Emily Wilde series is definitely more fantasy heavy and a lot less romance heavy compared to the Dream Harbor series, it still has a little bit of the romance, nothing super steamy. I like it because the main character, Emily Wilde, is a professor. So she's very serious, very focused. She doesn't have, time for all the extra frivolities of life, if you will. It's like the early 1900s, I want to say. Yeah, set in the 1900s on a remote Scandinavian island. Yeah, so this says, Emily Wilde series is a historical, cozy academia fantasy set in 1909, primarily located in the remote, snowy Nordic town of, I'm not going to lie, I don't know how to pronounce this word, Hrafsnavik. I'm just so sure that's wrong. Let's see. Hrafsnavik. You know what? That was pretty close. Let's get back to what we were doing. And so the whole series is set in the early 1900s following this professor, but she is a professor of dryadology, so she studies fairies. So in this world, Everyone knows that fairies exist. They for the most part, operate separately from the mortal world. Everything in their world is based off of the myths and the stories that people tell about the fairies. And the more we get into it, she also has a fellow professor that, it's a bit of a like kind of rivals to lovers story a little bit. We learn a lot more about this professor the more we read. So I finished the series in January. I genuinely loved it. They were super quick, easy ones to read. Covers are beautiful. And actually the author, I never said her name, Heather Fawcett. That is the Emily Wilde series, finished in January of this year. So next I read A Happy Marriage by A.R. Torr. And this was actually the very first book that I did with the book club that I'm a part of now. We unfortunately had our snowpocalypse here where I live. We had to cancel book club because that weekend the roads got really bad and icy, and so we are reconvening at the end of February at my house, actually. So we'll be discussing A Happy Marriage as well as the new book that I pick for us to read in February, because whoever hosts gets to pick the book that we read next. So A Happy Marriage by A.R. Torr. I don't read as much of mystery genre. I read it sometimes, especially like if there's like a fantasy influence in some way. I did read The Only One Left by Riley Sager. I had shopped a friend's bookshelf and that one stuck out to me, and so I read it and absolutely loved it. It's a really, really good twisty murder mystery. It's not a genre that I typically am drawn towards. I like the fantasy. But it was fun to like be a little bit outside of my comfort zone. So this one, it focuses on a homicide detective, and she has all of these missing women that she hasn't been able to find out what happened to them. We learn about her husband, who is a psychiatrist, and then kind of their marriage, the way they operate together. There's a little bit of like past family drama. You know that something happened. So this main character, Dinah, it's either Dinah or Dina. I think probably Dinah. She and her husband's Joe, they're obsessed with each other, but you know that there's something sinister underlying everything, and part of it is based off of this secret from her childhood that she doesn't want Joe to know because she thinks it will ruin everything. It's basically her memories of back then as they start to like get towards how they are now. The book had several twists. It definitely kept me engaged. I definitely had one late night trying to finish it up before the next day. One, because I was enjoying it and wanted to know how it finished, and two, I did kind of want to get back to my fantasy books a little bit. So I wanted it to be done so I could go on to the next book. Some of them you kind of see coming, so I don't think it was like the greatest mystery of all time, but it was an easy read. I enjoyed it. Not gonna give it a star rating because I don't really do that. If you read it, I would love to know. Okay, the next book that I read, this was actually another one that I picked up randomly, had not planned to read. I do have the physical copy because I shopped a friend's bookshelves. This is Funny Story by Emily Henry. Of course, Emily Henry, widely known for her rom-com books. We were visiting friends in Oklahoma City a couple weeks ago, and I saw this on her bookshelf, and it called to me, and I said, did you like that? She said, yeah, read it. And I said, great. So I brought it home with me. We actually took a little road trip to Texas, and so this was what I read while we were on our road trip at a camping site near Amarillo area. It was super fun. Again, like I told you earlier, like I've only kind of gotten into romance a little bit in the last year. There are a few others that I've read to, say that I've been in the genre. It honestly not surprising, started with more like romantasy. So I did read ACOTAR for the first time last year and started reading more fantasy stuff. Again, I don't read a ton of the steamy stuff, like nothing against it whatsoever. It's just not like fully what calls to me. If it like supports the story and the plot, then that's cool. But sometimes it's very obvious when it's shoehorned in. But all that to say, with Funny Story, super cute. I loved the like friends to lovers. I don't know. It's like I would almost say strangers to lovers, but isn't that just like everything? Like, the main character is Daphne, and we find out very early on that her fiance has left her for his best friend. His name is Petra, and Petra's now ex-boyfriend, who she left her new fiance for, aka Daphne's ex-fiance, whose name is Miles. And so Daphne and Miles have, don't have roommates anymore because theirs have left them. So they move in and become roommates. Okay, so I guess you could say, so then they become more friends, and then it is more like friends to lovers. Definitely centered around a town and the friends that you meet in that town. Also, another example is Dream Harbor, like I mentioned earlier. Really fun, really cute. I was definitely like her new best friend that she makes during this book. Her name is Ashley. Ashley is probably my favorite character of the book. Very, sassy, direct, and just a good friend. It's if I had one qualm with it, I think maybe it's a little bit longer than it needed to be. I think especially like the first half of it was very important, very like setting the scene, building up the characters. I think maybe the second half maybe was a little bit longer than it needed to be, but it was great. Let's see. Next we have the entirely true story of the fantastical mesmerist Nora Gray. Very long title by Kathleen Kaufman. This was actually a book that was on my Christmas wish list. So my brother got this for me for Christmas. It has two different timelines essentially. Lottie, who's in 1866, and Nora, who's in 1901, I believe. You kind of keep following both of their stories till they kind of merge, if you will. This is a bit fantasy because, yeah, I mean, it'd still be considered some level of fantasy. It's set in our world as if, like, especially in a lot of spiritualist communities and mesmerists, those were kind of like all the rage in like late 1800s and early 1900s. So this kind of follows that, but makes the, assumption that these were real. There's definitely still skeptics. There's definitely more religious communities that oppose these mesmerists, but you meet Nora. She starts as a different name, but in order to, you find out why she needs to change her name at some point, and she becomes this, we know from the very beginning that she becomes this famous Nora Gray. You kind of follow her story that leads her to that point. There's also this character named Lottie, who is, about 35, 40 years before Nora. And we're kind of wondering like why both of these women are highlighted. And for me, the biggest theme for this book was the creation of myth and legend, and just the way that stories can be spun and create an entire reality that might actually be true. There's definitely themes of women who are taken advantage of by larger systems, and how people believe they can profit off of these women's and young girls like Nora Gray is, I think she's only 17, their talents, their whatever, and how people try to profit off of that. It's really fascinating. Like similarly, it's important to say that like I don't hate long books, but I feel like I keep saying it could have been a little shorter. This one also felt like it could have been a little shorter. One of my favorite parts was that each time it would switch in between the two characters. We get a ledger from a newspaper, or maybe it's like one of those kind of like Dear Abby kind of letters to the editor, as if someone is collecting all of this historical reference to these two women who became legends of their time, and how we can piece together different elements of a story in order to create a full arc. That part is really interesting to me. However, I do feel like it could have been a little shorter. There are some parts through the middle and towards the end, I think it was just like, I think we just need to end it now. It kind of got a little bit repetitive in some parts. For the most part, I did really enjoy it. It was another one that like I kind of wanted to finish so I could get on to my next book, but that's okay. I do really like the historical aspect of it. So it is actually really beautiful. It doesn't have sprayed edges, but it does have this beautiful like celestial sky on the inside, the front and the back inside covers. So yeah, this was another really good one. But I was really excited to get on to my next book, which is Wild Reverence. I showed you a little sneak peek of this earlier. This is by Rebecca Ross. I know a lot of people are huge fans of Rebecca Ross's work. I have not read one of her books before. As you can see, I'm still very early into it. I wish I had a cuter bookmark to show you. I really like to get books that have, you know, staff picks or like recommended by the staff. Or this was when my husband and I, we went on a road trip to Stillwater, Oklahoma. There's a lake there that we like to camp at, and there's a bookstore there in Stillwater, and this was a staff pick. In fact, full circle, this was in the very first Emily Wilde book, and that was how I got started on that. So that would have been in probably early November that we camped there in Oklahoma, and so this was in the book, and then I use it as a bookmark. So, can't talk too much about this one yet. I picked it up because it's beautiful. This is such a beautiful cover. And then also the back, it continues the theme, but then you also have this sword here as well. It's so stunning. Have a little bit of just like the dark sprayed edges, which I like. It adds that kind of like moody vibe to it. But what's also really cool, I'm not usually one for like these kinds of illustrations. This feels like romance books that, you know, from like the 80s, but the inside has this really beautiful like celestial sky, which is funny. I guess that's kind of like a theme for January because I have these celestial skies in my books. So you've got that on both sides, and then the full view of this scene of the two main characters here. So basically kind of like a Greek mythology retelling. I love a Greek mythology retelling, or really kind of any kind of like god, goddess retelling. This is like, I do want to say, and maybe I should do a little bit more research on this because the names of these characters, so this is actually a mortal. His name is Vincent, but this is Matilda, and she is a goddess. She is a herald of the gods. I don't recognize those names from Greek mythology, and so I don't know Roman mythology names nearly as intimately. So if you do recognize like where those names, like comment those below, like where I should be researching and like learning more about these, or unless this, you know, Rebecca Ross just like took the themes of these gods and goddesses and just changed their names. That might also be. Example of this is A Dark and Secret Magic by Wallace Kinney, and this is a Greek mythology retelling. Anytime there's some kind of mythology retelling, I always like to check those out. And so that was something that pulled this to me. So far, really intrigued. We have the main character, Matilda, and she is born to this highly regarded goddess as the underlings. In this, there's like two sets of the gods. So there's the underlings who live underground or part of the earth, but then there's the skyward gods who kind of more what we would know as far as who would live in like Olympus. And so you have like the god of wind. And then Matilda is born as kind of like a middle of the road. Doesn't seem like that important as far as like their structure of like deciding of how important a god or goddess, they call them divine, so how important a divine is. And her special power is that she can travel in between worlds, whereas most divines can't do this. And so that's kind of where I'm into it so far. So the one thing, the writing is very like, it reads like a telling of the Iliad, which makes sense because like that it is, you know, a telling of Greek mythology. It makes sense that it would sound that way. I wish it sounded a little bit more modern. I'm wondering like the more I get into their characters, if that like won't be so noticeable the more I get in. But so far it's really beautiful the way that Rebecca Ross describes underlings, the skyward, as well as, of course, the mortal world, because Vincent, as you saw earlier, is immortal. And I'm not sure yet how all that plays together, but I'll be sure to let you know in February. So yeah, so that is what I'm reading for January. I'm sure I'll actually probably finish, because then I keep reading these really thick books. I think I need to give my brain a break with the shorter ones. Probably finish this one in February. And then just as like a quick little sneak peek, here's what I'm planning to read in February for the most part. I do have this one picked out for book club. This was based off of a YouTuber recommendation, Kari Carrie can read. I found that she had read it last year and highly recommended it. I do also like that it's a little shorter. There we go. There's the break for my brain, because as I said, our book club, we had to reschedule it because of the storm. And so now we have 2 books to discuss at that book club. So I like that this one's a little shorter to give us time to discuss both. I do believe it's fantasy, so I'm introducing this group to fantasy. I think some of them do read fantasy, not nearly as much as I do, because they stick to more like the murder mystery kind of genre. But yeah, it is. There's the edge of fairy, so obviously there is some fantasy, but I do get the sense that maybe it's even a little bit more, oh my gosh, in real time, I'm recognizing there are illustrations in this book. Are you kidding me? I don't know why that makes me so excited. I haven't read a picture book in a very long time, obviously, so I'm so intrigued. Thank you to Carrie can read on this recommendation, and now I'm really excited to know how my book club feels about it, and I'll let you know that as well. So I have that coming up. Next we have The Mountain and the Sea by Rain Naylor. I know nothing about this book. I was a part of I'm going to say this very wrong, Jólabókaflóð.
Jólabókaflóð.
The Icelandic tradition, which means book flood, I believe. A writing community where I work on craft for like my poetry writing. Everyone that wants to be a part of it, they all put their names in, and then we all anonymously get selected to both send a book to someone and receive a book from someone. So you never know what you're going to get or who it's going to come from until it arrives. And then we usually try to keep them wrapped until Christmas Eve, and then we all open them and then virtually show each other what we got. So then it can really set you up with a great reading list for the year as well. I actually sent The Orange by Wendy Cope, which is one of my favorite poetry books. It's very simple language. It's very funny. It's very dry humor. And that's like the poetry that I really aspire to, is like poetry that's really thoughtful and relatable and makes you feel heard and understood, but also really funny. I think humor is so important in life, and with the hardships of the world, we got to have humor to help us get through it. So, but I don't think this is going to be a funny one. I really don't know anything about it. I haven't looked at the back yet or anything, but I want to stick to like red books for February because I love a theme. So this was actually a ARC from my local bookstore. This is The No End House by Jeremy Bates. It was given to me for free. They were doing like a sale. If you spend so much. So essentially they do a Plaid Friday instead of a Black Friday. I don't shop Black Friday sales ever. Fun fact about me, I hate shopping more than anything in almost the whole world. It's not fun for me. I do not enjoy it. I don't know, maybe it's like a commitment issue that I have. I don't feel that way with books. I will own as many books and no issues there. But essentially on Plaid Friday, if you came to the sale wearing plaid of some kind, you got a discount. And then if you spent so much, then you also got a free book. And so this was the free book I got. This seems horror-ish, so a little outside what I usually read, but it's red and it seems like it wouldn't be too long of a read. So I was like, why not? We'll do that for February. And then last but not least, you have this one as well, Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. This is of course the first of 2 books in a duology. I have read The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. I read that last year in October. Honestly, I didn't care for it that much. It was interesting at times, but it just like, it was fine. It was fine. I don't think I'll read the second one. I'm just not that intrigued by it. I will say I picked up The Night and the Moth because I knew this was by the same author, and another YouTuber that I absolutely adore is Darling Desi, and she loves this series, and so I knew The Night and the Moth was by the same author, and so I picked it up. And just for whatever reason, I read that one first instead of this one. And yeah, I was like, I don't really care. So now I'm just like, ooh, am I not as excited about this series now because I didn't like that one very much, but I'm going to still read this one because I already own it. And then it's got red in it. And then also it has, I will say, it's absolutely like everything you could want, different elements of having a book like decorated. What does she say on How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days? Like frost yourself. That's how I feel with this book. It's got every possible way to decorate it. It's got a beautiful front. It's got the sprayed edges. It's a forest scene. It's stunning. And you open up, take off the dust jacket, and it's got this front part that says, "The girl, the king, and the monster they became." you open it up again, and it's got all of this on the inside. So and basically they kind of look like tarot cards almost, which makes sense because when I've heard Desiree from Darling Desi talk about these books, it's like the magic element of this world is based on cards. So that actually makes a lot of sense. So that is One Dark Window. Yeah, so I will say usually I read like 4 to 5 books a month. So that's what I read in January. That's what I'm planning to read in February. Very well might change. But essentially, this is my first YouTube video. So thank you so much for watching. I can't wait to get to know anyone who's watching this now, and please drop any book recommendations that you have in the comments below that you think, no, actually you should read this one for February. And of course, stick around. This channel is going to be about books, but also some travel and what I get up to in making the best life for myself as I can. Thank you for being here. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Okay, bye.